What is going on, people? Welcome back to another edition of the Lucrative MMA Betting Show. This week we have a banger of a main event. Deiveson Figueiredo taking on Cory Sandhagen. We got Nickal taking a step up in competition against Reinier, someone who is on a 2-0 streak since coming to the UFC. Perhaps the first person who can actually match Bo's grappling prowess. We got the old boys, Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod, taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio, as well as the new younger prospects in Daniel Marcos and Montel Jackson. Guys that are on a crazy win streak in the UFC. So it's not a big name card, but trust me, it's a banger of a card. And at the very worst case, we're gonna enjoy it because we're gonna make money on it. And that's exactly what I'm attempting to help you do today in this show. I'm gonna give you my betting breakdown, analysis for all of these fights I just mentioned. So let's stop mucking around, cue the intro, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back, boys and girls, and hello, welcome. Nice to meet you. For those of you who are joining me for the very first time. So in the Lucrative MMA Betting Show, we're gonna go over the entire main card, break them down for you, give you my analysis not only on the fights, but also on the betting lines, because those are the most important things. At the end of the day, boys, even if I pick a certain fighter, does not mean I'm gonna bet on them. Sometimes I will go against my pick and bet on the fighter who I think is gonna lose because the value is there. Some prime examples last week, boys. I wasn't confident that Jocelyn Edwards was gonna get a KO in that fight, but the KO prop was plus 1100 against Chelsea Chandler. So I ended up betting that and posting it out to everybody in my VIP elite zone in the long shot props area, and we cashed that one big. And boys, something I want to say about this show which is very important to understand, and I'm going to explain to you in an example of last week. So last week on my show, I gave a breakdown on Ian Garry versus Carlos Praches, and I said in that breakdown that it was a very tough fight, it was a close fight. I'm not 100% sure who I'm picking, but at the moment, for the show, I'm gonna pick Carlos Praches via KO. Now, the show's obviously recorded early in the week, right? And as the week went on, I did some more tape study, did some more research, and my opinion changed. I ended up betting on Ian Garry to win via decision at odds of plus 240. I also bet on Carlos Praches to win via decision at odds of plus 750. I even got a bit down at plus 900 on some bookies. Basically, I bet on the fight to go to decision. Now on the show, I said Carlos Praches via KO, but I actually ended up betting and sending out to my VIP members the complete opposite bet, the fight to go to decision, and we cashed when Ian Garry won a decision. If you would have just listened to the show and made a random bet on my Carlos Praches pick, you would have lost. But if you signed up with me and got my official picks, you would have won. I want everybody to make money, right? So I want to make it clear that in this show, these are my early picks, and they may not be my final picks, and they definitely may not be my final bets, because as I say, I bet against my picks a lot. That's what professional sports betting is. You need to find value in the number, not just who you think's gonna win. So with that being said, if you want my official plays and to actually know what I'm betting, then sign up with the link in the bio. Sublaunch.com/lucrativemma. We've changed it. We've got a new website. The reason we got a new website is because I've just released a completely free community group chat. So if you sign up for my plays, you also get a community group chat where you can chat with other gamblers, talk about the fights, talk about UFC, talk about other sports, and on fight night it's going crazy in there. So if you want to join, the link is in the bio, but I just wanted to make that clear, boys, because I don't want you guys watching the show, betting on everything that I say I think may happen, and then being upset if I end up betting the other side. Of course, you don't have to join, that's up to you, but that's a disclaimer for the show. So let's get into the card. Cory Sandhagen is taking on Deiveson Figueiredo in the main event of this UFC fight night, which is being held in Iowa in the United States of America. So Cory Sandhagen coming into this fight with a record of 17 wins and 5 losses. Deiveson Figueiredo coming into this fight with a record of 24 wins and 4 losses and 1 draw. And I know you remember that draw. That was against Brandon Moreno in their quadrilogy that they had the first fight. So currently they got the odds on Cory Sandhagen as a massive favorite, one of the biggest favorites on the entire card at minus 475, with the underdog price tag on Deiveson Figueiredo coming back at plus 375. So first things first about this matchup, the odds, they stand out at you, right? It's like, wow, Deiveson Figueiredo's almost plus 400. We've never seen this in the UFC. He's never been plus 400 in the UFC. In his UFC career, he's never been plus 400, and he's trending to get there against Cory Sandhagen. But I do understand why. You know, he's stepped up to the bantamweight division. Obviously, this guy was the flyweight champ. You know, this guy knocked out another flyweight great in Joseph Benavidez back in the day, as well as submitting him. You know, one of those fights where it was a little bit controversial, but the rematch was not controversial at all. If you remember, Deiveson Figueiredo put on one of the most brutal title performances against Joseph Benavidez in his second fight, choking him unconscious. And if you remember, there was that freeze frame of Joseph's eyes leaving his body as he was getting choked out by Deiveson. Brutal, brutal fight. You know, Figueiredo used to be a terror in the flyweight division, but obviously the reign came to an end when he fought a tough, durable Mexican by the name of Brandon Moreno. And I feel like those fights took a lot out of Deiveson Figueiredo. 4 fights in a couple of years against the same fighter. It took a lot out of him. After those fights, you know, he was out of his prime. And we've seen him win fights at bantamweight. We've also seen him lose very cleanly against Peter Yan. And even in the fights that he won, I felt like he's winning because his skill set is so deep. He's very physical, great grappler, a lot of power, great durability. You know, his skill set and physicality is very, very deep, so he can still win fights even outside of his prime. But it's clear that he's outside of his prime, and I believe that Cory Sandhagen is in his prime. If we go back and look at Cory Sandhagen's fight against Umar Nurmagomedov, yes, Umar won and kind of won cleanly, but Cory gave him everything he can handle. And we just saw Umar potentially beat Merab Dvalishvili. That was a very close fight. It was a 50-50 fight, and there was an argument that Umar won that fight. And Merab is literally a phenom of modern MMA, and Umar went 50-50 with him, right? So Umar is such an elite talent. So to see Cory Sandhagen holding up, never getting grappled for long periods at a time, reversing Umar multiple times in those positions. I went back and watched them the other day. He reversed Umar and got out of the positions cleanly multiple times, back to his feet, and started pumping a jab, pumping the teep, and he looked good in that fight. He was just beaten by the better man, you know, like he's never gonna beat Umar. It's gonna be so hard for him to beat Umar because the skill sets are different, but it showed me that Cory is in his prime. He just looked very good in that matchup, he really did. And I think that we got one guy who's in his prime versus one guy who's clearly out of it, fighting probably in the wrong weight class, or at least in the weight class that he doesn't have the same physicality that he did at flyweight. At flyweight, you could not move this guy. You could not hurt this guy. Now he's getting hurt against Peter Yan, you know. That doesn't happen to Figgy at flyweight. Yes, okay, the Moreno performances are maybe like once, you know, in that performance where he got TKO'd and a submission, he did get dropped briefly, but I felt like there's a lot of context there, like the weight was affecting him, that's why he moved up in weight. So, you know, we won't go there, but basically throughout his entire flyweight run, you can't move the guy. The guy's physicality is unmatched, and it doesn't have the same effect here in bantamweight. He's still physical in this weight class. It just doesn't have the same effect. And let me tell you something now, if he's not using his physicality against Cory Sandhagen, he's outskilled here. He's outgunned on the feet. Cory is the much better technical striker. Can Cory be hit? I mean, not really. It's kind of hard to hit him. But yes, of course, Cory can be cracked. I think Figueiredo's path is probably cracking him on the feet, hurting him early, maybe jumping on a guillotine or something, because Cory Sandhagen can be put in some submission attempts. But the guy is just well-rounded. He's great everywhere. I don't really see much of a path for Deiveson Figueiredo in this fight. I really, really don't. I think Figueiredo is outgunned, outmatched, and I think Cory Sandhagen's going to pick him apart over the course of 25 minutes. I don't see much of a path to victory for Deiveson Figueiredo in this matchup. I think he's going to need to jump on a guillotine. Like I said, I don't think that if he takes Cory's back, he's going to finish. I've seen Umar try to get in those same positions, and what I've seen in those fights was enough to tell me that Figueiredo's not going to rear naked choke him. I think guillotine is possible. I think his guillotine is way faster than someone like Umar Nurmagomedov, and he doesn't mind being on his back, so I believe that he can snatch it up there. His physicality is probably the same level, especially the squeeze and stuff like that. So, you know, I do think that guillotine is maybe a path. And guys, like, I'm just trying to think of potential paths now, which means that I'm not confident in this guy at all. You know, another path would maybe winning the fight on knockdowns, you know, like knocking down Cory Sandhagen once or twice, or having a big moment because Cory's just playing on the outside and he doesn't want to engage with Figueiredo's power. Like, the margins for him to win this fight are possible. Nothing is impossible in MMA, but some things are very slim margins and very unlikely in MMA. You know, I thought that last week it was very unlikely Chelsea Chandler was going to beat Jocelyn Edwards, so I max bet her. In a parlay with Jacqueline Amorim, as I believe that Poliana Viana also was very unlikely to win the fight. Now, is it impossible? No, but it's very unlikely. And in my opinion, we have Cory Sandhagen in the same spot here. It's very unlikely that Figueiredo has it in him to beat Cory Sandhagen. Cory is durable, very durable. So it takes away Figueiredo's biggest asset for the most part, which is his power. And his physicality in his front chokes, again, Cory has shown elite defense in those positions before. So yeah, man, I'm not going to keep going on about the same stuff. In my opinion, Cory Sandhagen is going to get this one done. I believe he gets this one done via decision just because Deiveson Figueiredo is so motherfucking tough. We've seen that throughout his entire career, even in his very last fight against Petr Yan. He showed his toughness heavily there. And yes, maybe Cory can land a crazy shot like a flying knee, as he did to Frankie Edgar, or an insane spinning wheel kick like he did to Marlon Moraes. But that's what this guy needs to knock you out. He needs a flying knee. He needs a wheel kick. He doesn't have the power to knock you out with a normal strike, with a straight hand, with a 1-2, with a hook, with even like a head kick. Like, he doesn't have this power. So going up against someone as durable as Deiveson Figueiredo, I doubt he's going to get a finish. He's going to need something huge, or maybe like a lucky doctor stoppage like he did against Yadong Song. I mean, there's big asterisks on all of this guy's finishes in the UFC outside of his submissions because he just doesn't have that power. So it's not about there's asterisks. It's just there's asterisks in terms of the power. You know, he's more of a point fighter. So I see him outpointing Deiveson Figueiredo and winning this fight via decision. Cory Sandhagen via 50-45, 49-46 decision is my prediction. So for the next fight on the card, we have Bo Nickal, no Bickle, taking on Reinier Derrida. Now, Bo Nickal's coming into this fight with a shiny record, 7 wins, no losses. With Derrida coming back with also a shiny record, 19 wins with only 2 losses. Double champion over there in one championship, now trying to make his name in the UFC, and he's had a very good start going 2-0. Currently, Bo Nickal, the big favorite, -312, with the underdog price tag on RDR coming back at +262. So yeah, so the first thing that stands out to me in this matchup, like I like to give you whenever I go into a matchup, is that finally Bo Nickal is taking on somebody who can match him in the grappling. Now, they're very different style of grappling. You know, Derrida is an elite black belt on the mat, whereas Bo Nickal is an elite wrestler, right? So it's a very different clash of styles, but it is still grappling nonetheless. So I'm glad we're going to finally see someone who has very high level grappling chops, albeit in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for the most part. Whereas Bo Nickal is coming with that old school, traditional American wrestling. Something I will say though is that Derrida is not just a Jiu-Jitsu guy. He started training in Judo and he's an elite level Judo player. You know, he's a black belt in Judo, but the Judo doesn't often translate to MMA that well, at least not as much as something like wrestling. But he will be very good with the upper body, very strong there, and he may have some cool tricks and maybe even trips for Bo Nickal. So, you know, it's a very, very interesting clash of styles. These guys are not strikers. And what I kind of think is going to happen is these guys are going to strike. You know, it's very, very often when you get 2 grapplers, they end up striking each other. And the reason they do that is because they probably can't get each other on the ground. Why? Because they're both very good grapplers, you know, so they're not only good offensively, but they're also good defensively. I would say that Derrida is the much more potent offensive grappler overall. I mean, I think he's a much higher level on the ground with the jiu-jitsu, but obviously Bo Nickal is a lot better at getting the fight to the ground. So like I said, very interesting clash of styles. So let's speak about the striking, because I have said that, you know, this fight will probably come down to the striking. I'm going to say Bo Nickal is a better striker. I think he's a smarter striker. I think he's way more fluid on the feet. I think he's more technical on the feet. And I think he's improving at a much rapider rate than someone like Derrida, who's been in the game for a lot longer than Bo Nickal, right? So I believe that Bo Nickal clearly is the better striker here. Doesn't mean Derrida can have no success on the feet. Of course not. Bo Nickal is not a good striker at all. So, you know, he could potentially have success on the feet. But if these guys strike for 15 minutes, Bo Nickal, in my opinion, is a big favorite. Now, the reason I say that is because if you go back and watch some of Derrida's One Championships fights, namely the fights against Anatoly Malikin, you will see him looking very lost on the feet. Now, obviously, that guy was a massive guy. He was stepping up in weight. You can still see some of his striking capabilities in that fight. You go back and watch his fight with Gerald Meerschaert, GM3, right? GM3 is not a good striker. We know that. He's kind of very similar to Derrida, to be honest. He just has a lot less skills. And GM3 was kind of clocking him on the feet, you know, multiple times. Now, Derrida landed a big shot in that fight End of the first round, he landed a knockdown. But outside of that, man, GM3 was kind of tagging him up on the feet, kind of piecing him up at times. And it's just not a good look, you know, it's not a good look. And I think that what it tells me is that Bo Nickal's going to be able to have success on the feet here. Now, if you go back and watch all of Derrida's fights, like, it's very hard to find any tape of this guy striking for extended periods because he's just always getting the body lock. He's always throwing bad strikes, even sometimes flying knees into takedowns, into the clinch. And he's very good in the clinch. When he's in the clinch, he'll land big body shots, big knees to the body, knees to the head even. He will drag you down and knees to the head in the clinch. But then he'll take you down, you know. 90% of the tape I've seen on this guy, he's on the ground. And on the ground, he's an absolute phenom. You know, he is so good on the ground. We saw that in the Kevin Holland fight. I bet on him to win that fight for that one very reason, because he's a phenom on the ground. And if he gets on top of you, it's going to be dangerous. And I'll tell you something now, if he gets on top of Bo Nickal could be in trouble here. This is a different level of grappling. Derrida is a much better grappler. Now, I do think Bo can have success on the ground specifically. The reason is because I think he's just too athletic for Derrida, way too well versed in those wrestling positions. I think he's going to be the one dictating where the fight goes. So of course he could potentially body lock him, ride him, pull his hand out from underneath him, have some shots. Like, he can have grappling success. Maybe Derrida even slows down and he gets an arm triangle late in the fight after pummeling him for a couple of rounds. It's possible. But Derrida is just much better in the jiu-jitsu. So it's just going to be trouble and scary if Bo Nickal takes the fight to the ground for any extended period of time, or at least it has the ability to be that. I will say that Derrida is more of a guy that does his best work from top position, but he's got a good guard as well. This guy is so elite. He is fighting the elite of the elite in one championship, the elite of the elite grapplers. You know, he's facing Taya Rutulo, who's one of the best grapplers in one and in the world, and also Andre Galvao. Now, he didn't get submitted by either of those guys, and they rode for a long time. It tells me a lot about who Derrida is. So overall, guys, I'm going to pick the guy who I think is going to win on the feet, because I think the fight's going to be on the feet for the most part. And the person who's going to want the fight to be on the ground more is Derrida, because I think he's the worst striker. He just doesn't have the skill set to get it to the ground, in my opinion. Yes, maybe you can judo flip him or trip him inside reach, something. But Bo Nickal's got an amazing base, amazing physicality, as well as knowing all the technical aspects to wrestling. So yeah, I think the fight's going to be stuck on the feet, and I'm going to pick the better striker. I'm going to pick Bo Nickal. I don't know whether he's going to finish this guy or whether he's going to go to decision. I've seen him look terrible on the feet, so something tells me that Bo could crack him. But at the same time, Bo might just play smart, disengage from the grappling, jab him, overhand, like he did against Paul Craig in a very, very close fight. So, you know, I'm not confident that he's going to finish him here. So I don't really know about decision or finish. And that's one of those points where I'm going to do more tape research. I'm going to do more study. And I send out to my betting group, my VIP group, at the end of the week, you know, as I was saying with Prates and stuff. So yeah, right now I'm going to pick Bo Nickal. I'm going to pick Bo Nickal to win this fight via KO. I'm going to say that he starts to get his striking game going. He lands big on Derrida, and he has somewhat of a breakout performance by knocking out Reinier Derrida. But like I said, this is one that I want to do more tape study on. So follow my social medias, sign up to the VIP, and get my full breakdown later in the week. So the next fight on the card is a battle of the old boys. We got Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Daniel Rodriguez. So Ponzinibbio is coming into this fight with a record of 30 wins with 8 losses. Daniel Rodriguez has 18 wins and 5 losses. Currently, Ponzinibbio is the slight favorite here. He's sitting at -125 with the underdog price tag on Daniel Rodriguez coming back at a +105. So the first thing that pops out to me in this matchup, again, as I always like to tell you guys, is that these guys are old motherfuckers, right? They're both 38 years old, I believe. But yeah, that's the first thing that pops out to me. It's like these guys are old, and it brings some inherent volatility into the matchup when guys are old. What I mean by that is stuff that hasn't usually happened to them, to the fighters in their career, starts to happen. Things that you haven't really seen in their previous career or previously in their career starts to happen. Case in point, Nicholas Dolby last week. This guy's never been knocked out in his entire career, officially or unofficially. And he had a lot of fucking fights, but he's 40 years old. So what did we do? Bet on Randy Brown to finish him. And what happened? Randy Brown finished him, right? Randy Brown wouldn't have finished him 5 years ago, but it's not 5 years ago, right? So it just brings some inherent volatility into the matchup. And something that I want to teach you guys now is that when you are betting on these guys who are old, expect the unexpected. Things that you haven't seen before may start to happen. With that being said, let's get into the matchup. So I think that Daniel Rodriguez is coming into this fight showing me that he still has a better chin, even in his old age, than someone like Santiago Ponzinibbio. Man, when I was looking back at that Ponzinibbio tape, I was not impressed. You know, in his very most recent fight against Carlston Harris, this guy could have potentially been finished. He was done. He got cracked big time, and somehow he survived and ended up getting a finish of his own. So shout out to him, but I mean, man, not a good look. The very fight before that, Muslim Selikhov, what happens in round 1? He gets cracked. He gets hurt in that round. Fight before that, Kevin Holland, what happens? He gets knocked out. In round 3, he gets knocked out. Fight before that, Alex Morono, what happens? He gets smashed. He gets hurt, wobbled all over the octagon. Again, somehow manages to push back and get a round 3 finish. So shout out to him. This guy's got heart. He's got the will to win. And I think that's what he has an advantage over Daniel Rodriguez. But his chin is definitely not an advantage, man. Daniel Rodriguez has the much better chin. He's getting hurt way less. And I think that he could hurt Ponzinibbio in this fight. I really do. I think he can find the chin and hurt Ponzinibbio. Now, you know, at the same time, I'm not confident that Daniel Rodriguez is going to go out there and win the fight because, like, how can you be? I mean, this guy has not shown me much over the last 3-4 years. I think he's on a steady downslide. He hasn't really done much in MMA. He seems to have slower reaction times. He seems to be way less fast than he used to be. And just overall, he's just not as good. You know, he's getting worse. And of course, he's 38. Like, this is what is to be expected. It's not a crazy take. It's nothing, no crazy insight from me, but it's something that needs to be said and something that is easily verifiable just going by watching his tape. So yeah, it's a tough fight because like I said, inherent volatility with these older guys, but I'm going to go with Daniel Rodriguez in this fight. And I favor him mainly due to the fact that I think that Santiago Ponzinibbio is going to be the one that gets hurt more often than not in this fight. Now, Ponzinibbio can still crack, man. You know, as we've said in the Morono fights, round 3, comes back. Carlston Harris fight, round 3, comes back. He can still crack. He can still hurt you. So I'm not saying it's impossible that, you know, Daniel Rodriguez gets chinned here. But what I am saying is that it's more likely that Rodriguez wins rounds on big moments just because of the chin of Ponzinibbio. And it's more likely that he wins inside the distance because of the chin of Ponzinibbio. So I think that should edge him being favorite, you know, and on top of that, I feel like what Pons has, you know, is potentially the better technical striking, maybe some top time and grappling upside, but I don't think that those things are going to play itself out in the fight. Now, can grappling work? It's possible. I don't think it will. I think it will mostly be a striking fight. And then the technicality, I feel like that's going to be offset. You know, I feel like the volume is going to be similar. I think the technicality might be offset by a couple of big moments. So I just feel like Daniel Rodriguez's path to victory with the big moments and the wobbles are more likely than Santiago's path to victory, which is just being the better fighter, outworking him, being the better technical striker. I think at their age, those things level out a lot more than power and chins, right? Like Daniel Rodriguez, he's probably not lost his power. It's not like he has so much power, but he's not lost his power at this age, right? And Ponzinibbio has lost his chin at this age. We've seen it. So things like that, in my opinion, those mean more. You know, at their age, these things, these intangibles mean more to win a fight than being a better technical striker or having a bit of grappling upside, because physicality drops, your energy drops, you can't grapple for 15 minutes like you used to, stuff like that. So, you know, the one thing I will say is that, and I mentioned it earlier, is that Ponzinibbio has more of a will to win. He's come back in fights that he's lost before and, you know, won, especially lately, even in his very last fight, late into the fight. So I feel like an intangible like that actually does matter a lot more than being a little bit better of a kickboxer in this fight with these old guys. So yeah, my prediction is going to be Daniel Rodriguez, though, overall via KO. I'm going to say he gets it done inside the distance. He puts one on Santiago Ponzinibbio's chin, and everyone in the MMA community cries because Ponzinibbio is kind of a legend, but I am going to predict Daniel Rodriguez to get this one done. And the next fight on the card is a banger. My favorite fight on the entire card is Montel Jackson taking on Daniel Marcos. Now, Jackson is coming into this fight with a record of 14 wins and only 2 losses, and Daniel Marcos, the most shiny record on the entire card, is coming into this fight with a record of 17 wins with no losses. Now, the bookmakers don't seem to care about that because currently they have Montel Jackson as a -200 favorite with the underdog price tag on Daniel Marcos coming back at +170. So the first thing that stands out to me in this matchup is, damn, what a banger. Two elite prospects in the division. The reason I say prospects is not because of the age, because Montel is getting on, but because of what the MMA community believe that these fighters are capable of. Montel Jackson is ranked 15, and a lot of people think that he can crack the top 10 and then have some cracks at the top 5. And same with Daniel Marcos, you know, me personally, I believe that he can crack the top 15 just like Montel has just done. So yeah, these guys are prospects. They're fighting each other, and I can't wait for it, man. Daniel Marcos is an elite striker. He has very, very good eyes in the pocket. He's very good at judging distance. He's very good at finding his own shots, and the way he picks his shots, very technical. And even if he's getting outlanded, his shots are the ones that are more eye-catching, not only because they can do damage and they can hurt because he does carry power, but just because of how clean his strikes land. He lands clean strikes, not pitter-patter strikes, not a jab that kind of grazes off, not a little leg kick. This guy is landing not just big strikes, but clean strikes. You can clearly see like a beautiful left hook that clips the chin, and maybe it's not super powerful, but it's so obvious that it was a cleanly landed strike that probably did some damage, even if we didn't see it knock the opponent down or something like that. So, you know, these type of fighters can get rewarded by the judges, as we've seen in this fight against Davy Grant, because of the pinpoint accuracy of the way they fight. Now, what also happens though is that they are often at risk of being out-volumed, and that is a risk that Daniel Marcos, with the way he fights, encounters in his fights. But I don't think he has to worry about that with Montel Jackson here, because Montel Jackson's not like this huge volume guy. He's kind of similar to Daniel Marcos in a way where he judges range quite well. He's absolutely massive for the division, super long. I remember back in the day hearing about Montel Jackson, about how he has to wear the gloves for heavyweights because of the size of his hand. And he's a bantamweight. I don't know if it's heavyweight or maybe it's light heavyweight or middleweight. I'm pretty sure it was heavyweight though, but that is absolutely insane. Like if you actually internalize that, like what the fuck, this guy's a bantamweight and he's wearing heavyweight gloves. The guy's got massive hands. He hits very hard because of those hands. He's knocked down almost everyone he's ever fought. You know, I remember the famous one where I bet on him to finish JP Byers. Knocks him down 4 or 5 times and can't finish him. That was absolutely sickening to watch. But this guy can crack, man. He can knock everyone down. But what I was saying about his striking style was very similar. He throws pinpoint strikes, a beautiful straight down the middle. But he's not like a high volume guy. You know, he's not going to be throwing out a million strikes like someone like Davy Grant is, for example. I want to touch on the grappling quickly. Like, Montel is the better grappler here. He's the stronger grappler, the more physical guy. I don't necessarily think he's just going to go out there and top time Daniel Marcos. I mean, it's not his game at all. You know, in fact, the only losses we've seen of Montel Jackson's career is in fights where he is, in fact, getting taken down himself. So he's not the type of guy to go out there and initiate 10-15 minutes of top control. He can get you down. He has got takedowns in fights more than once, and he can ride out the back, or he can ride out in top control, but I don't think he's going to have much success in that realm against Daniel Marcos. I don't even know if he's going to push it. And even if he does, I personally don't think he's going to have much success there. Daniel Marcos, in my opinion, is a great underhooker, right? So he's great at turning himself off the fence. I don't think Montel's going to be blast doubling him. I really don't. I think it's more going to be clinch, trip, stuff like that. And, you know, potentially getting on top by a knockdown or something like that. So I just feel like Daniel Marcos has enough defensive grappling to stop Montel here. I also believe that Daniel Marcos could potentially get a takedown of his own here. Now, I'm not predicting it necessarily, but, you know, seeing the way Montel has lost multiple times against elite wrestlers, by the way, or at least elite MMA wrestlers in Ricky Simon and Brett Johns, of course, I don't think that Marcos is going to be able to do that game plan. But what I do think is that there's a potential he gets a takedown or two, right? So I think the grappling evens itself out, actually. So this is an absolutely fantastic fight. I am a Marcos truther. What I mean by that is I bet this guy every fight, right? I bet Daniel Marcos basically every single fight. I think he's an elite fighter. I've won a fuck ton of money on him because he's never lost, right? So if I'm betting on him most fights, then obviously I won a lot of money on him. So like I said, boys, amazing fight. Now, I'm going to actually pick Daniel Marcos in this fight. I think Daniel Marcos is the best striker that Montel Jackson has ever fought. I don't think he's ever dealt with somebody as good on the feet or even in MMA as Daniel Marcos. I think Daniel Marcos is most likely the most complete fighter he's ever fought. And if he's not the most complete fighter, because I'd have to go back and look at his entire record, he's definitely the best striker. Yes, better than Julio Arce. I believe that he has great power to hurt Montel in the pocket if it gets there. I believe his stance, switches, his range control and his distance management, I would say elite for the MMA game. And I don't think Montel has dealt with that style before, and I don't know how he's going to react to it. Montel is a big favorite here. I'm riding with my guy Daniel Marcos on this one. I think he's too much of an elite striker to pass up at massive odds. It's plus 185 on some books out there, plus 170 on Bet Online. I think the leg of Montel can get smashed up in this spot. I think Marcos is going to surprise some people in the clinch. I think the elbows and the knees are going to be brutal. And Montel is going to be cracking him too. Montel could hurt him too. But I believe that Montel could be the one getting hurt in this fight. Daniel Marcos has power for the division. I know we haven't seen it too much because this guy has gone to decision multiple times. But don't forget, he is dropped and hurt multiple guys in the UFC. And the KO prop for Daniel Marcos could be a sneaky angle. It's going to be a massive price, though. I'm not necessarily outright predicting it. Like I wasn't outright predicting Jocelyn Edwards via KO last week, but I did bet it. And so did everyone in my VIP. So that's my prediction, boys. That is my prediction. I am predicting Daniel Marcos as the underdog to upset Montel Jackson here and to keep his shiny 17 record alive, moving to 18-0. Daniel Marcos as the underdog is my prediction. All right, boys, now we made it to the best part of the show. This is the lucrative Wheel of Fortune, where I give you one chance to join my elite zone completely for free. I'm giving out a gift and you may win. So if you want to enter into the giveaway every week, all you need to do is leave a comment on my YouTube video down below and you'll be automatically entered into next week's prize draw. So whoever wins the prize draw this week, whoever wins the Wheel of Fortune, is going to get given a 100% free code to join my elite zone. The elite zone is a part of my website where you get all of my official bets, all of my long shot props, long shot parlays, full card breakdowns, every single fight on the card, every single week for PFL and the UFC and Bellator. We got PFL this week, so you better tap in for this week. We crush PFL differently. All of the breakdowns for every single fight on the card broken down, as well as the best parlay pieces. Last week, I cashed 6 parlay pieces. Every single parlay I put up on the website, they all cashed. They crush every single week. Not only that, you get more plus EV bets that I haven't placed but I think hold value, and you get community group access. You get access to the Lucrative Vault, which is a dedicated hub for gamblers like yourself. I'm in there personally. It's a group chat where we all chat about fights. The chat is popping off on fight night. People are sharing their live bets. So if you like to live bet, that's a great way to make money in the group chat. And it's a good way to meet fellow MMA fans and fellow gamblers. And because it's launch week, I am doing something special for everybody watching this video. I am giving you a massive 50% discount to get an Elite Zone membership. All you need to do is go to sublaunch.com/lucrative MMA. Click the Elite package and on the checkout, type in 50 off, 50 OFF. You'll get 50% off and you'll get access to everything I just mentioned. I'll see you in the group chat, see you on the inside, but you might have won. So let's spin the lucrative Wheel of Fortune and see. All right, boys, let's spin the Wheel of Fortune. All right, spinning now. Let's go. Who's going to win? There's a lot of comments on there. Remember, comment below if you want to win. All right, slowing down. Here we go. Is that going to be Zaida? I think so. Zaid Fernando. Congratulations, man. You just won a free 1-month membership to the Lucrative MMA Elite Zone and Lucrative Vault, the community group chat. So congratulations. Just DM me on social media. I will verify you by your YouTube channel, which I have up now, and we'll get you in, bro, and I'll see you in the group chat. But don't worry, if you didn't win today, you still can join for 50% off. This discount will only work for the next 20 people. I did the discount earlier as a launch special, but for this video, I'm resetting it, but it's only gonna work for the first 20 people. And this video should get around 7,000 to 8,000 views. So you better be quick if you wanna sign up and get the discount. I'll see you in the group chat. And that is it. Good luck on your bets this weekend. Let's cash it and F the bookies.